after 6. May we have the roll, please?
Trustee Betterman?
Here.
Daney?
Here.
Gansey? Absent. Hopkins?
Here.
Laporte? Sawanski?
Here.
President Gunstein, absent.
At this time, he is. Next item we have on the agenda is the Town Hall session. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to give testimony?
Sorry. We've already started the meeting.
Yeah. We can mark the mayor late, along with trustee Jaworski late.
Gansey.
Gansey.
Gansey's here.
And Mr. Mayor, we're at the Town Hall session at this point in time. If you'd like to take it at this point in time, that'd be great.
All right. Okay, it's 6:05. We'll open up the town hall portion of the meeting for 6/16/2006. Ask clerk, please call the roll.
We
Trustee.
did already.
Did you?
Yeah, right.
I've already done that.
We're ahead of you guys.
Hall session, no one's gotten up. We're actually on item 4 at this point in time.
We've also reduced the mayor's salary while you were absent.
It's okay. Can't get reduced much more. All right. All right. We'll open up the town hall portion of the meeting. You've already introduced. If anybody would like to speak, please do so by stepping up to the podium.
I did that already.
Did you?
Yes.
You did?
I think we're ready to hear from Houseal.
All right, so we're ready to hear from Houseal Lavigne
Right, we're at
regarding the Lake
agenda
Street
item
Corridor
number 4.
Master Plan.
Evening. Thank you for having us here today. We're excited to kind of see this project progressing from the last time we were here. We took a lot of information back from the session. We've been hard at work, and what we're going to do today is walk through 3 developing concept scenarios and ideally get a lot of feedback from you and focus this into a preferred plan as we move towards the open house in July. So you all received the planning influences memo, and if you haven't had a chance to look at that, really the memo was really set up to summarize our initial findings. All those meetings we had, 4 focus groups, the village board visioning workshop we had with you last time we were here, and then 2 meetings with staff. And really we were documenting existing conditions, identifying recurring themes, and really establishing those elements that would be the key influences to everything you're going to see here today and as we start to sort of move forward. So just before we move ahead, there were really 5 key bullet points that came out of all of those meetings, and really I just want to sort of put them up front today because they're going to sort of weave their way through everything we talk about and see here today. First one was across all groups, this is a gateway into the community, and that was very clear. All focus groups, the session with you and staff, this is a highly visible and a great opportunity for the village, its current location. It was really identified as an active destination-oriented opportunity. That came across from all groups as well. It was a huge opportunity to strengthen the village's identity. And finally, really, it was said in several different ways, but this needed to be a development that evolved and shaped itself differently than a typical standard commercial development along a highway. And so everything we heard really pushed us towards thinking about this a little differently that way. And finally, we're dealing with the constraints, right? We've got IDOT coordination and the Oak Avenue alignment. That's a big thing here. We've got the wetlands and detention that we're weaving all of this development sort of around and through. We've got the sensitivity and the conditions of the existing neighborhood that sits to the south and to the west. Traffic, adjacent to the school, circulation, all of those are concerns. Market feasibility, what can we do? I mean, we could sort of look at this from pie in the sky, and really at the end of the day, this needs to be feasible. And then, of course, parking economics. I mean, we've met with several developers and really understanding the challenges of surface parking versus deck parking and really where feasibility sits in those scenarios. And then finally, really just the assembly of all the parcels and who controls what land. I mean, those are really the constraints that really led to the strategies we're going to run through here today. So I'll kick this off. You all have the packet, so we'll feel free to ask questions as we're rolling through. The way this will flow is really sort of setting up a preamble with the design drivers and the influencers that we sort of led and sort of guided us through the development. Then we've got 3 development concept scenarios. There's a copy which really has the sort of description of what that scenario is on the first page, and then on the second page it gets a little more detailed with some of the programming icons and a little bit more information about the potential uses in those areas. There's those slides, and then as we get to the end, we have a series, we call them atmosphere or programming diagrams. Really, that's just taking one of the concepts. Those programming diagrams can really fit in several of the concepts. And I guess, really, at the end of the day, it's not just pick one, it's what works in each of these, what doesn't work in each of these, and how do we like amalgamate this into a final preferred concept. All right, so the first thing we did was we had a look at the village's strategic plan and really the 5 goals that sort of align here with the strategic vision, and looking at the Lake Street corridor opportunity and seeing what's here and how does this all kind of align with the strategic vision. So, we say it's about the place, and in doing that, it's like, what are we thinking? This is a gateway. We mentioned the gateway opportunity here. It's a more active and recognizable district that's within the opportunity. We looked at different uses. We talked about a lot about family-oriented uses, destination entertainment uses, open space, trails, recreation. That was another big sort of driver. The opportunity for ecological landscape integration, stormwater management, and really education really existed here on this site. Housing options, what works? What's going to drive this from a housing standpoint? And then finally, what's going to complement downtown and not sort of take away from it? What uses are going to be here where we can really establish that relationship between the downtown, sort of uptown, and keep that moving forward. How it works, I mean, we talk about market, this has to be grounded in reality, and we're working with Meach Group, and as we continue to develop these scenarios, he'll test the feasibility of all of this as we move towards sort of preferred option. Again, coordinating with IDOT and that Oak Avenue realignment, that's just critical. The connection and the trails and the walkability is just paramount, and the phasing, the flexibility that needs to happen here in terms of a phased development. This isn't all going to happen at once, and really being responsible with the way that would sort of balance out. And then the transitions. We've got a number of neighborhoods here. How is that all going to sort of shift and work together? Oh, I did it, Christy. I went the wrong way. All right, design drivers. I think I kind of hit on these, so I won't stay on this slide too long, but please feel free to read the text your own accord. It really just reinforces the 4 components that really drove the development of these 3 concept scenarios. So signature, civic, and open space. Really, the idea of this sort of connected green space that is going to exist here. We're working sort of through areas that we can't touch with wetlands and woods, and so we've got this really unique opportunity that differentiates itself a little bit from what's happening downtown. It really does make the Lake Street corridor a little different with the amount of landscape and just greenery that exists. Connected and accessible, really important. We're going to have sort of different districts. It's a big enough piece of property that you'll see as this sort of lays itself out, but yet it all needs to remain connected. And also we're looking at how does this connect itself further to the south to downtown as well. Focused and flexible programming, we're not here, please don't look at these plans yet as like design, they're not design plans, they're really intended to be sort of like larger swaths of use. So the ideas and the thoughts that are sort of occurring and sort of being drafted up here are not intended to be interpreted as like, there's a building here and that will come in the sort of exploration of the plan. But today it's really just about understanding what the programming is and how flexible it needs to be, what should go where and what doesn't make sense in places that we might be showing it today in these scenarios. And then finally, the idea of the destination, the identity, the real opportunity. And I think you'll see as we kind of go through these scenarios, there's a couple areas that just scream, entry, gateway. This is the spot really to highlight. Quick little vignette, just again, sort of explaining like these are the drivers in terms of what we're dealing with from a use adjacency, and a lot of these are, these plans were included in the planning influence memo with a little more detail and a lot more specificity, but really we've got use adjacencies that are all being considered in all of this, residential to the south and the west. We've got institutional and commercial to the east, and then just to the north east, multifamily. All right, so we'll jump into scenario A. We're calling this the Lake Street Mixed Use District. It's probably the most complete in terms of its development. It really does organize the entire study area around that Lake Street frontage, and it's supported by that central market core. It's got a significant amount of single family attached, sort of spread to the west and to the southeast. It really does sort of test this proactive use of mixed use, entertainment, recreation, market, kind of in a real catalytic node right at the intersection of Bartlett Road and Oak and Westlake as they all sort of converge together. It's really probably the most intense of the three. And from a feasibility standpoint, that's where our job really will test this a little further beyond this. But this is really, you'll see on the right-hand side of that document are the percentages of land use that are dedicated to those specific uses. So the mixed-use commercial in this particular one does climb up. If you go to the next page, it really then starts to break down into its programming elements. So we were seeing the realignment of Oak coming sort of through here, really creating this opportunity in the center, the heart of the site for the market core. In terms of like programming, is this a place for Toms? Is this a place for, weekend vendors to set up? Really though, that sort of really interactive opportunity, that sort of loop that cuts through becomes a little bit more of a pedestrian-oriented street as opposed to vehicles, sort of like racing sort of through there around that space. The intent here really would be for those interior streets to be slowed and almost the term Woonerf is sort of a Dutch term for a road where it's really a shared street between vehicles and people, and it's a slowed down opportunity. So cars are still moving through there, but the pedestrian is prioritized sort of through those spaces. The idea of the green space exists in all three, sort of through that center left swath as we're dealing with wetland areas and a lot of buffer zones between the existing residential and the site. You'll see in the bottom left-hand corner, there's a real opportunity there to connect the neighborhood to the south and the west into the development, into the trail system at Firefighters Park. And really the screening, and just in terms of scale, you're looking at a minimum dimension of 40 to 50 feet on that southwest corner. So that would be the sort of buffer range between that single-family multi attached and the existing residential. And it swells up to 80, 90 feet in some of the sort of deeper regions. And as you sort of like move through, this is the only scheme where we actually include single family attached in the southeast, I believe. So from here it goes into a little bit more of a captured that space as more of a park space, a park zone. Wellness and recreation, again, we sort of kept on that northeast side along the corridor. Mixed use is really highlighted. The intent would be that there would be parking centralized in this space and then surrounded by mixed use. So your shopping, your dining, your commercial is all happening in that space. This scheme is also anchored by a destination entertainment use, which is that brighter pink over here on the top left. And it's the only scheme where we're proposing really a significant vendor that would come, not a vendor, but a destination that would be very specific and identifiable, not necessarily something that you would see, say, downtown. So it really does sort of have that dichotomy between downtown and uptown, and it really pulls away from the competition.
Which part is that?
That's over here in this, sorry, we went backwards. That would be scenario A, there we go. Over here in this sort of center
Got it.
left. There we go. All right, so scenario B really starts to balance things out a little bit. It's not quite as intense from a mixed-use entertainment standpoint. It's close in terms of its land use area for mixed use, but it includes a lot more residential. Heavier emphasis on multifamily in this particular one. We've got that sort of multifamily block in the heart, in the center of the site, and then another multifamily block over there to the west, integrated into that single-family attached district. Single family, so effectively you would be moving from, as you move west, you'd be moving from a multifamily, 3 to 5 story down to the townhomes, and then scaled down. The buffer, there would be like a 40-foot buffer, and then into the single family residential to the west. This offers a little bit more open space too in terms of its flexibility and its connectivity through the site. The ecological park is introduced here in the southeast. So that zone that existed as residential in scenario A is now captured as trail, park, open space, part of the sort of larger loop that would tie all the way from Westlake down to really where the new realignment for Oak is starting and across from the school. This also could introduce a wider mix of housing as well, where we could start to look at duplexes, stacked flats, walk-ups. So there's opportunities here, I think, and we'll continue to review the feasibility of all of this and really kind of pick and jump in and propose really the more strategic use and the more strategic residential mix that works best from a financial standpoint. In the sort of early assessment, townhomes are what we're hearing from our consultant are going to be the catalyst. They're going to drive. They're going to fill in some of that gap financing. So they're going to perform really strong. And just advancing into sort of that next slide. Oh, I went backwards. There we go. There. So with Oak Avenue realignment sort of coming up here, what we've done is we've positioned the market with a little more visibility now at the corner where we had mixed use and commercial, really creating that sort of nodal entry gateway at the intersection. We've now got the market sort of anchoring that corner along with mixed use. The idea of the sort of gateway plaza and entry really sort of does exist in all three scenarios at that sort of corner of that intersection. In this case, we also compressed the recreation wellness, pulled it away from Lake Street, and really carried that mixed use. So in this particular scenario, you get a lot more frontage along Lake Street with the mixed use land use. Again, multifamily, a little bit heavier. Idea here would be that, the market and the mixed use space is really, you've got a pedestrian zone which would allow a little connectivity between those uses, and then some parking that would ultimately sort of sit and split within this sort of mixed use zone. Allowing through traffic, I think, was also really important. So every scenario has that sort of connection that comes off of the realignment and ties into the center of the site, allows traffic, from the residential on the far west to kind of get over to Oak or out of the lake as an option. So scenario C is the least intensive. It's the most landscape forward. It's got the largest amount of open space in terms of its proposed, development. It's got a strong emphasis placed on the trails, on the detention zones, on the ecological landscape. It's scaled strongly against the existing residential districts to the west and to the south. A lot of buffer zone. It's really divided into two zones of residential and multifamily zone right in the center of the heart, and then some single family attached on the west, with a bit more green space in terms of that buffer zone between the residential to the south and the single family attached. It really does, it relies now on sort of a broader mixed-use connectivity to the commercial that sort of sits at the corner. We've got the market in the same place as we did in B, sort of anchors that entry point, that gate, that nodal point. Entertainment commercial really in this particular one stretches all the way to Old Oak Avenue, and really does give a significant amount of street frontage along Westlake. Just gonna jump over to this next slide. Oh, sometimes it goes backwards and sometimes it goes. There you go. Now it's going the right way. So here we see some of the programming, you know, the idea of like really kind of creating a sort of a centered gathering space for the community. We thought programmatically, you know, an event lawn, there's opportunity for weekend events, children playscapes, movie nights, those kinds of things I think could be really community oriented, allow for seasonal programming sort of through the winter months, through the fall. And I think that's the case. That'll go all across all three scenarios, and that's been a consideration for really any of the land uses has been to really look at this from the perspective of, you know, how does this district operate in the summer months as well as the winter months, and considering how, you know, trails would be used, how access and circulation might happen as we move sort of through the seasons. So now I'm going to shift into really the final 2 pages, and this is where we get a little bit into the atmosphere of the programming and what it's sort of hard to establish the feel of some of these scenarios when you look at them in plan, but when you start to really think about precedents and imagery that you know, we're trying to convey, these ideas and bullet points go a long way towards you know, presenting the opportunities that exist in each of these sort of land use areas. So really starting here over on the left-hand side, and I'll make my way, we've talked a little bit about that entertainment district and really the idea of a strong anchor that could be the destination for, you know, this particular district. Wood is that piece that's drawing people here, right? This is why I'm coming to this space, but there's all this other stuff to do. So the idea of the festival commons, we got this public green here, right? This flexible lawn. We talked about movie nights, talked about picnics, seasonal markets. I mean, there's just so many different things that you can kind of do, you know, with this type of programming. The market, we talked about Tom's Produce and the idea of this sort of extension of the market here in a food hall or pop-up vendors or food trucks, you know, so really activating this zone. And again, thinking about the connectivity, the idea of a really slowed pedestrian street in some of these areas where there's connections between the mixed-use spaces, between the entertainment zones and the market and the recreation and wellness. It really does become very program-centric in a very civic way. It really does start to really draw people here for things other than, you know, just going to have something to eat. The idea is to keep people here, hold people here, and have them enjoy and recreate in this space. The idea of the mixed-use village, we get into mixed use down here. This is like where it's a little bit more intimate, local dining possibly, you know, the idea of the destination of the food hall that maybe ties itself into the market core. Walkability, I think that's going to be really important. Street trees, sidewalks. We talk a little bit about circulation and connectivity through a lot of the focus groups, and the idea of making sure that there's that sort of connectivity through this whole district, and then also down to the south towards downtown. The Discovery Play, again, I think whether it's here or in other scenarios, this is scenario A just as an example, but this sort of finds its way into different spots in scenario B and C as well. But I think really important, what we heard was like, people looking for places to come and hang out with their kids for 3 hours, and maybe they want to get a coffee and just sort of hang out here, and what are the opportunities that exist? So sports courts, pickleball courts, tennis courts, so some things that maybe tie into the school that's adjacent there, and allow that, potential for, catalytic use between the two. And then the idea of the gateway arrival, the sequence here at this corner, and what does it mean to enter Bartlett? And again, hearing it over and over again, what's the identity? What's the identity of Bartlett? And I think that's sort of the key opportunity here to really take advantage of what's happening at this corner, because this is where it's going to be really activated. And then as we sort of shift here into the atmosphere, into more of the open space, into the residential zone. So we talk about townhome clusters and just these front doors sort of facing streets and trails and pockets of green. Really the buffering would be with, separate trails that sort of allow adjacent neighborhoods to get into this site, and then really sort of harness and use that space as well. Multifamily, again, 3 to 5 story, looking at walk-up apartments, integrated into the landscape, again, scaled appropriately, nothing that really feels like it's over-dominating the site. In the next steps, I think you'll get a better sense of that scale as we get into the modeling of some of this in 3 dimensions, and you really start to sort of feel like what a 3 to 5 story building, looks and feels like on 65 acres. Again, we talk about connectivity and like the idea of this loop, the naturalized trail, is really, you've got a fantastic wetland, some really great mature trees on the site, and sort of keeping that in. This is really one of those pieces, I think, a lot, the naturalized area, the wetland area, really does start to differentiate itself a little bit from downtown. It's something that just exists here, and it's a draw here, and it's not pulling something away from downtown, and then vice versa. You've got the elements in downtown that are, unique to downtown. The idea of the Prairie Loop, a trail that goes east to west and then potentially continues onward south to downtown or east towards the wetlands adjacent to the school. I think a lot of potential and a lot of excitement that really kind of comes out of all 3 scenarios. So that's kind of where we are today. I'd love to hear thoughts, feedback, and just where you think things are strong and, where we need to maybe push back on.
Do you guys want to start with scenario A and kind of go through what your thoughts are in each scenario?
Well, can I ask a question first before we start talking about the scenarios? Thank you very much for your work. I appreciate all of this. This is really nice. Do we not have anything for west of or east of Oak Street now to tie all this together? We don't have any scenarios,
We don't own that.
but we're trying to develop it.
Correct, but it's not part of the Houseal Lavigne's scope of work, correct?
Correct. We focused on this area because of the size of the development potential for this. Further east are much smaller lots that will typically develop on 1 or 2 parcels at a time. So that's something we'd look at more with like design guidelines and the landscaping to make sure that it would complement what this is once we have the master plan.
Okay, thank you.
So I think we'll start with scenario A and kind of go through what our thoughts are on each individual item, or from each individual trustee. What you like or don't like about it, and then kind of go to scenario B and C. So who would like to start?
I've looked at quite a few plans over the years, and I was drawn to scenario A, or B or C. When I first looked at it, I thought, this really an aggressive program, and it's a nice layout.
Aggressive in as, what do you mean? If it's more aggressive than the other ones?
The issue I have, or the question I have, is multifamily in a 2.9 scenario, or 2.8. Further, I saw where you could have anywhere from a 3 to a 5-story building. And I don't know how appealing that would be in this time. If we limited it as to 3 stories, do we could draw a developer? I didn't think so either. Thank you. I wouldn't want to see a 5-story building down there at all. So maybe we could reevaluate the multifamily. And we're looking at, what, 2.8 acres? And like the, you have single family attached to it. Spread the single family attached to multifamily. A little over 5 acres. Would be in keeping with what we have for your single family attached, 5.8 acres. And obviously, you want to be gravel. Personally, I would like to see that entire area be single family attached.
Okay, understood.
Responsible, staff, which I also believe is 5-story.
What we have discovered from our
Focus group.
multiple efforts in the marketplace for multifamily is that 5 stories is what you need to be viable. So anything below that would not be attractive. And I think, Tony, is that right? Yeah. Heard that a lot in the focus groups with the developers. You would not want to see a 5-story building. Got it.
I think that could be shaped in a different way too. Right now, we're running vertical north-south. I think looking at maybe a multifamily that's running east-west and then single-family below it, south of it, running east-west might be the opportunity that it creates. The idea of stepping it down too, maybe you're starting at 5, but it's cascades as it gets a little bit closer to that, adjacent neighborhood, it drops to 4, then 3. It creates opportunities for really unique rooftop experiences inside of that multifamily building as well, like patio space or, but you certainly don't want, I agree with you, and I think the next study where we get into the 3-dimensionality of it will certainly help with the overall understanding. You don't want a 5-story building looming above somebody's backyard, and I think we'll certainly avoid that. So I think we'll test out and look at some of these heights and just ensure that those view sheds are clear and, you're not looking at the back of a building.
John, John, right? Is it John? Oh, sorry, Corey. The detention ponds where you guys show them on scenario A, you have 1, 2, 3, 4 detention ponds. Is that required by, or are we just doing that to?
It's just graphic, right, for right now. It's just.
So that it is buildable land there that could stretch. I'm trying to put in my head, based off of the acreage that you're allocating for families, single family, multifamily, you have a total of 22, almost 23 acres combined in scenario A. How many residential units are we going to get out of that? Roughly.
Yeah, it's a good question. We just did, how many per acre did we have in that last study? It was like 12? 12 to 16 per acre was where we were in a recent study in Burr Ridge. And that included some three-story multifamily buildings.
Because if I'm not mistaken, Christie, the focus group indicated that a minimum of 5 stories to make it, to scale it for their return on investment. Is that what I gathered out of that?
That was what they were thinking, yes, based on their experience. So, and I do want to clarify that a lot of the area that they're showing is open space to the west. A lot of that is existing wetland. And so some of it that's under IDOT control, they were very adamant that remain wetland and open space, so.
In the planning influences memo towards the end, there are a series of maps, and there's an environmental map, and it does identify really the limitations of where we would be able to build to, and kind of, this is probably spilling a little bit past it to get a little bit more green space, but it's fairly close to that north-south run, and then along that southern edge on the west.
So one of the things that I noticed that I like in site scenario A versus B and C is, I don't foresee, I should say, I don't want, the market, the core market being on the prime corner, where you showed it in scenario,
I see, yep.
that is a prime real estate corner, and the market could potentially only be a 3-month-a-year market. So I think that is something that we can either tuck in somewhere else or try to possibly incorporate it into what you're showing as the ecological park, but maybe shrink the size of that park. I think that's a,
Well, the market, to your point, it's there, but I think, I mean, because that's where Tom's would go, right?
we can move,
Because Tom's, I think, relies on being on 20.
they do, but we can't,
We heard from Tom.
So we asked Tom specifically during one of the stakeholder meetings if they needed to be on 20, and Tom himself said, I don't think I need to be on 20, I just want to be accessible. So,
okay.
yeah.
With that said, in scenario A, I like the market kicked back slightly, but I think that that U-shaped road that's going around it could potentially cause a lot of traffic unless there's like a roundabout there. Because you have two-way, three-way traffic basically tying into that. So I think that's just one area that we might have to refine a little bit. Maybe split that into two and have a road going through there. I know this isn't a final end-all be-all plan.
Move it back north or south? South? Is that what you're saying?
I would say move that south and create more of a larger entertainment mixed-use corridor at that intersection. Because even with that market kicked back south, you're still only leaving a very narrow corner property at that new main intersection.
Let me ask staff, I don't know if you can answer this or not, but Tom's Market, do you know how much square footage, or does he have an acre out there? What is the size of his lot?
He doesn't have an acre. He was excited for basically any plan that would provide him better parking than what he has and better access for his customers.
I didn't think he had an acre at all.
No. Not for his stand itself.
Is the reason the scenario A is the only one with the entertainment or the anchor because of space?
It was really just to test uses. So from a feasibility standpoint, we wanted to look to see really going from an intense use in scenario A down to scenario C, which is, it really sort of scales back and it dedicates a lot more of the space to residential and open space. So really trying to find the balance and what the feasibility looks like for each scenario. So that's scenario B is probably your most balanced. And again, like I want to just reiterate, only because we're only showing it in A doesn't mean that's where it has to, it can exist in the other scenarios. And I think that's what we'd love to do here is really come up with a scenario D, which is the scenario that starts to sort of grab all the positives from each one and start to lose, some of the problematic pieces.
Okay, so like the goal then today is to hear all the feedback. There's going to be a scenario D, but it's still a flexible scenario D depending on who's interested.
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
What doesn't change is the detention ponds on the west side then.
Right, there's limitations that we're all, the constraints that exist, and that's them.
So that naturally creates a buffer between a potential 5+ story building to the retail and the mixed use based off of that detention area there with the bike paths and the open trails. Am I?
Correct.
I think I'm seeing that correctly.
Absolutely, yeah. So as you start to scale up on like that pink swath there, you've got a massive, couple hundred feet of buffer between, your residential and that entertainment zone.
What is the buffer distance from the back of the houses on Leela to what you're showing roughly to the bike path that's behind the SFA?
Can you speak up, please?
From the yellow edge to what would effectively be the backyard, it's in that range, it's around 40 to 50 feet.
Okay.
You're talking about or there at 1.6 acres, with the driveway all the way around it. That's one of the things that stood out for me when I first saw that. I was intrigued by that.
Well, let's look at scenario C. Scenario C gives us the revenue diversity over a long period of time that we want. We could move the market to where the nature center is at and put the horseshoe-shaped lot like you had in scenario A there. I like scenario C because it's streamlined. There's a lot of green buffer area, the ecological park. So you get the green. I don't agree with the recreation and wellness so close to Lake Street. Little kids on Lake Street's not a good mix. Move it or eliminate it, and possibly move on scenario C, the mixed use, and take up that whole area where the market's at, and again, maybe shift the market down to where the nature center is at. I don't think we should put more houses where the ecological park is at, that's my opinion, and then tweak it from there. But we have commercial, we have entertainment, we have mixed use, we have multifamily, we have single family, and one of our goals was revenue diversity over a long period of time, and I think that nails it. And the commercial will attract people that work there during the daytime. They'll visit the stores, they'll visit the restaurants, they'll stay late. They might even live there. My daughter is 28, lives downtown. She wants to move out to the burbs, but she wants to live in a walkable community where she can leave her house or apartment or townhome and go to the restaurants and bars. So that's the 28-year-old opinion who's lived in the city, who's lived in Nashville. She wants to move out to the burbs, but she wants to be walkable.
I think that has been the gap that we've had. We were supposed to have a 5-story condo building in town.
Yep.
And one of our goals in our strategic plan is to have more options. And part of that was the reason to get different ages
Yep.
into our community.
I want to make sure that we all understand, because there seems to be some confusion on the recreation wellness in scenario A. When I looked at that, I thought that was specifically earmarked for seniors. Is that the case? Because
I think there's a lot of,
the fact about children being in there, and that would be a concern of mine also. But when I looked at
we looked at some precedents for that particular spot in knowing that Lake Street was right there and considering the idea of a little bit of a landscape buffer and then even maybe a little bit of a sunken moment where this whole parcel really sort of starts to step down as it moves away from Lake Street and then rises back up, right? So it kind of creates a natural bit of a separation. So if it goes there, I mean, we don't want to see this land use, but coming right up and butting right up against all of that traffic. So there'd be strategies we would take from an urban standpoint, from a landscape standpoint, to sort of separate that. But point taken, it probably lives somewhere else on the site in a much more comfortable
I think
area.
scenario A is just too busy.
Yeah.
I think we're trying to squeeze too much in.
Thank you. I agree with trustee Laporte on that also. And I did have a question on scenario A. Under the entertainment and mixed use, we've got play, shop, the Gateway Plaza, taste, drink, performance, a festival, an event lawn, a picnic area. Where are we going to put parking for all this?
Yeah,
A lot of stuff going on here, and is there going to be enough space for parking to accommodate it?
the parking's intended really to sort of sit as part of a podium in some areas and then like internalized parking inside of the zone. So like where you're seeing like the text, it's really giving you the idea. It doesn't mean, I don't want it to mean like that's where that is. So it does need to get sort of thought through in the next stages. Like, okay, how does this physically now come into existence and how does parking work? How do we move from streets to parking? That's sort of part of all the next steps. So it's a big parcel, so there's definitely opportunities for parking, and that'll be part of the next study.
Well, I don't know, I understand what you're saying, but planting this in everybody's mind that we're going to have an area for festivals, we're going to have an event lawn, we're going to have an amphitheater or something, and people are going to want to put that there. They're going to want to put all that there, and then we're going to have to find out how people can get there.
Yeah, understood. And I,
Especially if you add mixed use to it, which we're all in agreement with mixed use. That's just a lot of stuff into that area.
it is. And just to, hopefully to build some comfort and confidence in sort of what happens next, we'll, right now, you know, these are big sort of like swaths of color. We'll right size and right test this to actual building footprint. So the next time you see something, it'll actually have some substance, some sidewalks will be there, streets will be there, just to give you the presence of like, okay, I understand now the scale of this. We'll have a model like digitally that'll give you a sense as to like how all of this works. And if you want to, like after this meeting, I can kind of show you something in a similar way, not for this project, but for a different project that we just did that kind of went through this process and really built that comfort.
Thank you.
Have you done projects that back up to residential properties similar to this?
We just did a study in Burr Ridge where we had a very similar situation where it was a commercial light industrial development that had adjacent residential, and really sort of working with the buffering and the scaling. I think it really does come down to distance and scale. So as residential was coming up against residential, we were really conscientious of just the scale of that residential. If it was townhomes, you know, we kind of kept it in the sort of scale as it moved towards single family. We had no single family in this particular example, like detached. So it was all attached as it sort of moved back. And then as we scaled into multifamily, what we ended up doing, and I just sort of mentioned the idea of a tiered sort of multifamily proposal where it wasn't a big 5-story block, but something that scaled from 3 to 4 to 5, the further it got away from, you know, that adjacent residential.
Did you have stakeholders from that neighborhood at any of the meetings, the focus groups?
In the project we were just talking about?
Oh, this one, the current one, the Bartlett one. Anybody from Ford Lane or Leela come by to? Okay, awesome.
So, just to clarify, the yellow area is the potential for single-family attached, which that area that you're carving out would include the parking for those residents, so they wouldn't be street parking. So you're incorporating that into the size that you're projecting or for that. So you could put a 5 or 6-story building and move that building forward, and the parking could be in the back as well, correct?
Correct.
So you would create more of a buffer that way.
Correct.
So it's developer dependent.
Correct, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think in the scenario, yeah, like that.
Just
that's a
saying,
great
whatever. I mean, buffer, you can move buildings forward so that the front of the building is closer to the internal streets, and then the backside would be your parking, allowing more buffer from the residential neighborhoods.
Yeah, we would negotiate that with the developer that would come in, staff would do.
Yeah, whatever developer would come down the line.
So I will say that 40 to 50 feet is our standard landscape buffer that we typically have between different density uses. So that's consistent with what we've done village-wide.
And is this site lower in elevation than the Ford Lane and Leela Lane homes?
It drops as it gets, it starts up at that height as we're on the sort of south and then cascades down.
Okay. So a backyard of a house on Leela could be looking out at a 1st story or 2nd story of a building potentially, correct?
Potentially, but I think in the scenarios that we're really proposing, that would be very unlikely. Like, I mean, the distances they should be enough that.
I wasn't sure what the topo was out there, if it was a significant drop, so.
I did really like what you said. I like all the paths and the connectivity, and I really liked when you said to keep people in the area for a few hours. I think that is a big point, at least for me, to think that if we're building something new, that we're keeping people, because not only are we keeping people here, but it's also very close to our downtown area. So I think that is a very good messaging that I like to see, and like the things that would keep people here. So if you did one thing, but then you're, whatever, if it's the recreation and wellness area or just some of the open space or riding your bike, I think that's really important, at least to me.
And can you clarify, the detention ponds are real ponds, right? It's real water? It's not like one of those little marshy things that just fills up when it rains?
Yeah, I think that we would need some engineering to really sort of predetermine that. I think that there certainly are marshy zones out there right now that aren't holding, water. I think part of the development and understanding what happens would be that sort of next step, and really creating curating a naturalized ecological landscape where, yeah, you don't feel like you're walking through a, in sort of
Well, I think
bug-infested.
the Stratford development in Bloomingdale, I would assume it's a man-made lake, but they're creating a man-made lake and they're building all the restaurants around it so that you've got a view of the lake while you're
Exactly.
eating dinner. So anything that we could do something along those lines to capitalize on the existing structure of nature, Mother Nature.
I agree with you 100% because it's twofold, right? So a single-family attached residents are looking out on an open space, but then your mixed-use businesses have the opportunity to have an overlook of some nice area, for
Rooftop,
outdoor seating
patio.
Yeah, I
as
think,
well.
100% agree. Yeah.
John, Trustee Batterman, do you have any thoughts?
I have a lot. So the mixed use, we talked about residential above. I see you've got the multifamily there on the, right next to the market core. Is there any thought that we could maybe add some retail on the bottom floor of that? Just because the mixed use and the multifamily, I noticed you didn't really know
Yeah.
that the mixed use would have a lot of that residential. I'm kind of thinking buffering on both sides of the walkway to have retail, if we have, I think you said entrances, ground floor entrances for the family dwellings. Like, could we change that to more retail?
I think you could absolutely have a mixed use, so you've got your sort of first floor retail along that edge across from the market, and you've got, 3 stories, 4 stories of residential above that, and if in that particular example, absolutely.
I'm just thinking about as you walk down the path, and maybe, I love the curvatures, so the scenario B and C are a little straight for me. The curves are nice, but as you're coming around that curve, if I could look out both sides and see retail, I think that would be ideal versus housing on one side only. And with the market core, I'm guessing it's going to be more of a green area.
Yeah, the market core is probably a little more, like more plaza space, more open, like it would be a little more flexible for pop-ups and tents and food trucks like that kind of. And the other thing that could happen too on that multifamily space, if we were looking at needing a little bit more of a buffer so that you don't have residential like right up against that sort of street. The multifamily you could create a little bit of a buffer, that sort of front porch, maybe those units have a little bit more of the front porch feel, a little bit of a front yard, and then you're at the sidewalk. And then, so I think there's some strategies we can do, but absolutely retail along that edge is.
Yeah, I like the idea of multifamily, high story lookout, maybe over that public green. Those would be great units to market. And the recreation, I agree, it's too far. But to your point in the presentation, it's right next to Eastview, so I think you're trying to put a little buffer there between the entertainment district or the entertainment zone versus where Eastview and we have our school. So maybe that's okay. It is right up against Lake Street, but.
What type of commercial could we attract if we looked at scenario C? Is that more like office built, like office condos, hospital, medical?
In scenario C, wait a second.
It's like entertainment and commercial.
Sorry.
I like the revenue diversity.
Yeah, I feel like the entertainment commercial and one of the strengths that in, from my perspective, that scenario C brings is that an entertainment commercial really locks in and anchors a solid corner. It's probably your most, it's the busiest, it's the loudest. It's going to have, probably the most people sort of activating it in the evenings and stuff, and it's the furthest away from the residential. So it has like a little bit of it's creating its own buffer by being on that sort of far east side. So it's combination of, whether it's restaurants or, festival spaces that in this particular case, I think we even talked about like, okay, we've got the scale here for this parking lot. Does the parking lot allow an opportunity to turn into this drive-in space where you've got the public lawn, the parking lot, and you got these really unique opportunities to sort of watch movies at night from this particular spot. And again, it makes sense where it is because it's away, all the light and all the activity is a little bit buffered by, the street by Oak, and then it's away from all that residential. And then in this particular scheme too, it sort of cascades like the use intensity lessens as you move further west. And so by the time you get to the west, you're single-family attached and then moving into that single-family neighborhood.
All right, thank you.
We're going to have to be cognizant of time, but
Doesn't B give you kind of what you're looking for?
I would say, is anybody overwhelmed by scenario A?
No.
I think A is too busy.
Okay, A is too busy. So I think there's a hybrid between B and C. I also agree with trustee Laporte. I think C is a very clean design layout.
Lots of green
Gives
space.
us the potential for increased residential and increased commercial with a nice balance, while not taking away from the green space. And we also have to keep in mind that our park district is a separate taxing district, so any park that goes in here would have to be privately owned and operated. Otherwise, the park district would have to be part of this design, so part of this scenario.
I'll tell you what, I'm really not in favor of anything where we're looking at multifamily, where we have to address the 5-story apartment buildings. I'm not in favor of that at all. My first reaction was I liked scenario A. I still do, but the other board members are leaning towards some type of compromise on scenario C, which I would go along with, but I would not go along with having a situation where we have to have a 5-story apartment building. With residential.
I agree with you on that.
Well,
I think we could look at, and if I'm looking at C, it's up on the screen here, and we looked at a multifamily that, was maybe more linear, running along that urban edge. Maybe you'd mentioned the retail at the street. You get up, multi-story, you've got the space behind it for potentially parking the buffer, maybe even some additional single-family attached in that zone. I think there's a lot of space there. The scale's kind of deceiving at this stage, so seeing what this looks like, I think, with real buildings in place, which I'm more than happy to kind of look maybe even at a couple scenarios on that particular spot to say, well, this is what this looks like here with some multifamily, but this is what it looks like with just single-family attached.
I'd like to see that, because I feel like I've seen some really cool multifamily, like I think like downtown Lombard, and like you said, the rooftops, and like overlooking all the entertainment and like the older the buildings. I think it looks good.
Yeah, I'd recommend a field trip.
I think everybody should take a look at this in detail and email the staff your comments on each individual scenario so that we can finalize some sort of a draft plan. I appreciate your presentation and the hard work you guys put into this. It really looks good. I think there's a lot of upside potential for our Lake Street corridor. So I'm sure you will be back very shortly with some additional renderings. I wish we had more time. We could talk for 3 hours. With that, I need a motion to adjourn.
Moved.
Moved by trustee Swansky.
Second.
Seconded by trustee Laporte. Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Betterman? Daney? Gansey?
Yes.
Hopkins? Laporte?
Yes.
Swansky?
Yes.
We are adjourned.